Hi, I'm Dr. Jeffrey LeBenger. At Summit Medical Group, we believe that all citizens need to be informed about the important healthcare issues that affect their lives. That's why we're very proud to support important programming produced by the CAUCUS Educational Corporation.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by Summit MD Anderson Cancer Center, Delta Dental of New Jersey. Everyone deserves a healthy smile. Valley National Bank, Johnson & Johnson, New Jersey Resources, New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation. And by the North Ward Center. Promotional support provided by Observer New Jersey Politics. And by Jaffe Communications, where business, media, and government converge in New Jersey.
Welcome to State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato, coming to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio in Newark. We are pleased to welcome Mike Rispoli, director of an organization called News Voices New Jersey. Good to see you, Mike.
Thanks, Steve, for having me.
News Voices New Jersey is?
Right, so News Voices New Jersey is a project of Free Press. Free Press is a national media and technology advocacy organization that fights for the public's right to connect and communicate. So we work on a lot of different issues: net neutrality, broadband access, and the future of journalism. And through the News Voices New Jersey project, we look to build better relationships between local communities and the media outlets that serve them.
Put this in perspective. The FCC had what is called a spectrum auction. Of what and why does this matter?
Sure. So for the past year, the FCC has overseen the spectrum.
Federal Communications Commission.
Yeah, the Federal Communications Commission has overseen the spectrum auction that you're talking about. Essentially, the FCC is trying to free up spectrum to expand wireless coverage. And as a part of that, they're incentivizing television stations to sell their broadcast licenses. And so New Jersey, since it used to own the New Jersey network, actually owns public media broadcast licenses. And so New Jersey's been participating in this auction where they were looking to sell 4 licenses.
Okay, so why does it matter to the citizens of New Jersey and to media entities in the state?
Sure. So it matters because the state is set to receive hundreds of millions of dollars from the sale of these licenses. And so what we're interested in seeing is, can we find a way to take the hundreds of millions of dollars that are coming in and reinvest it back into supporting local journalism? The reason why we're focusing on this is because there's a local news crisis going on in New Jersey. There are fewer and fewer outlets every year. There are thousands of journalists that have been laid off in the past 10 years. And there are huge pockets of the state that get little to no coverage whatsoever. And that's not just a problem for the journalism industry, it's really a problem for our communities. Lots of studies have shown what happens to communities when news coverage is deficient or disappears. Corruption increases, fewer people vote, fewer people volunteer, fewer people are civically engaged when there are fewer media outlets serving those communities. And so this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take a huge amount of money to figure out what's the future of media in New Jersey.
Who decides where this money goes?
Right, so the state legislature are going to be the ones deciding what happens to this money once it comes in. And at the moment, they haven't said what they're going to do with it. No. We just know that it's going to go to the general fund.
So let me ask you a question, and this is not to be self-serving because we are partners with NJTV, which is, you know, there was NJN, there is NJTV.
Right.
This started in July of 2011. We at the CAUCUS Educational Corporation are collaborators, independent producers who partner with this entity, NJTV. We're here in the studio.
Right.
What role do you feel that this organization plays in providing important news coverage to the state?
Yeah, NJTV has done a fantastic job covering the state of New Jersey. And we want to find ways to strengthen NJTV to really further their mission. And so we think that one of the ways that we can use this money is creating a consortium between the state's universities that NJTV would be able to tap into, essentially creating a fund for local media and local journalism that would help NJTV, but also help all the other media outlets in New Jersey, and maybe start a few others that in communities that aren't being covered right now.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. There is an entity that you're talking about here called the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium that involves Montclair State University, NJIT, Rowan, and Rutgers. What is that, and why does it matter to this discussion?
Sure. So the idea behind the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium is that the money that would come in from the sale of the broadcast licenses would go into a fund that would grant out money to different projects or ideas that would support not only local journalism, but trying to find new and innovative ways to deliver information to communities. So that could be a digital startup, that could be NJTV using that money for a project, or it could be creating open data portals or whatever it may be.
Like, for example, NJTV has this ongoing initiative in your neighborhood, or in Camden, or in Trenton, they're going to other communities. That's in people's communities. So you keep talking about local community coverage, and I'm not here to plug NJTV, but that's exactly what they're doing.
Sure. Yeah, so NJTV is one really good
But I'm saying
media
with these
outlet.
universities, what I'm trying to get at, you're trying to get them to do more in their communities. It's not academic. You don't mean academic
No,
programming.
absolutely not.
I'm trying to understand why academic institutions of higher learning are involved.
Right. So it would be a way to create a fund that would promote research and innovation in media. But the big thing with the consortium, as we see it, is that it wouldn't get caught up in the ivory towers of academia. They would have to partner with local media outlets.
This is practical, hands-on,
absolutely,
media that matters in people's communities. Just so we understand,
absolutely,
it's not media research.
No, it's not media research. The most important thing that this fund would do is to get money into communities, get it to local media outlets, NJTV, and others.
How much does it worry you, Mike, that I mean, some of us who are old school like to pick up that newspaper? Yeah, we are following everything we got to follow. Yeah, we got it. Don't worry about it. But we like to pick it up. We like to get our hands dirty. Dinosaurs or what? Us and them? Us and it?
I don't think so. Yes. People consume media
differently. Yes, I'm a dinosaur? Thank you very much.
No, of course not. No, of course not, Steve.
But what's going to happen, seriously?
I think that's what we're trying to figure out, right? I mean, I talk to people. I grew up in Monmouth County. I talk to people who are my family and friends, and they see
press still relevant?
Absolutely.
But they're also online growing.
And they're online growing, but people are seeing that paper is getting thinner and thinner every day. So people are asking what's going to happen to the future of media in New Jersey, and that's what we're trying to figure out. You're absolutely not a dinosaur, Steve, but I do think that we do have to figure out, okay, if people's consumption habits are changing when
particularly
it comes to
younger
media.
people. Our 14-year-old looked at the sports page in the Record the other day. He's like, well, Dad, how do I read this?
Right.
Because he's always reading.
Right, on the phone, on a tablet.
Are younger people going to adapt, or we just have to adapt to them?
I think it's going to be a combination of both, and I'll give you an example.
Sure, go. Got a minute left.
Yeah, there's a really good media outlet in New Brunswick called New Brunswick Today. They started out online only. They realized that there were huge pockets of the community that they weren't reaching, so they started doing a monthly newspaper. So what we have to recognize is that people get their information from a variety of sources.
That's right.
And so what we need to do is figure out what are those sources, what are their needs, and figure out ways to deliver them information that gets in front of them, not say it should be online only, it should be print only. It's all of the above. And we think that the consortium is going to provide the opportunity to actually discover what the needs are of communities and deliver them information.
P.S. I think you like Tap Into as well?
I love Tap Into.
Do we have, Jack, we had Michael Shapiro, or is that? He came in, he was terrific. That's a great site. We're not promoting any particular site, but go out there, find different sources, and don't forget newspapers still are relevant in public broadcasting.
Absolutely, support journalism.
Listen, keep doing what you're doing, Mike. You're doing important work.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
State of Affairs, come back right after this.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
State of Affairs welcomes Michel Boufadel, is director of the Center for Natural Resources Development and Protection at NJIT. That's the New Jersey Institute for Technology. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Michel, let me ask you. You are an expert on the subject of climate change, fair to say?
Well, I mean, that's one of my areas, but I'm not one of the foremost experts. But yeah, we have a decent awareness of climate change issues.
You understand a whole range of complex environmental issues. Mm-hmm. What would you say the #1 issue we face as a country when it comes to environmental threats to us?
I mean, there's no doubt climate change is of major concern, not because it is of the acute impacts, but it is more about the overall large-scale impact on also on the economy. So it's not an issue of whether the water would be of high quality or not, which could be affected. But I think it is very important issue because it impacts the local economy at different regions. Like we know, I mean, definitely in New Jersey here, we would be affected by global climate change. Well, one of the reasons is because many of our prime areas on the shorelines, they would be inundated, they would be covered with water. And now, what to do with it? I mean, you know, there are some novel ideas, which is to really try to pull back. But I think that's unlikely to happen. I think because of the values of properties there, most likely we're gonna just hunker down there, build seawalls. And
so let's stay on this. Sorry for interrupting. At the New Jersey Institute of Technology, you have these experts who studied post-Sandy. Mm-hmm. You and your colleagues studied what happened, why it happened, what the implications were. And now decisions are being made about land use, about development down at the Jersey Shore. Some of us live down there. Some of us live pretty close to the ocean. To what degree do you believe you and your experts and your colleagues at the New Jersey Institute of Technology are being asked, hey, what should we do? How close should we be to the ocean? How high should these homes be? Where should these businesses be? Or should we be much further back? Mm-hmm. And what about all this sand that we're pumping up and building up these dunes? Were you asked and consulted on these things?
Yeah, we were asked, and we have different colleagues who are directly involved in some design and build operations in terms of the shorelines, you know. But I think really it is maybe I want to bring it back to maybe the essence of the matter, which is it is highly unlikely, the way I see it, for us to retreat for major development, major resorts. Right. Barrier islands, you know, to just retreat and go 50 miles inland.
Too late, can't do it.
Yes, too late. And
so what should they do?
Well, I don't want to say that what they should do, but the way I see it is going to happen is that we're going to be building seawalls, you know, raising the roads, raising the houses, and it's going to be little by little, just finding ways to adapt to this new situation. One of the things also we worked during hurricanes, immediately following Hurricane Sandy, we get funding from the National Science Foundation to investigate, in essence, the two things: the resilience, how long would it take for areas to recover, and right. Namely wetlands, natural systems. But I also wanted to investigate the mobilization of contaminants.
That's right.
And because in New Jersey, unfortunately, we have a lot of contaminated sites. You know, some of them they call Superfund sites. And what we found is that there are a lot of contaminants that they were next. The area that we investigated was next to a Superfund site. And then contaminants such as lead, antimony, copper, they get mobilized and then went into people's yards, people's houses. And the issue is not, so immediately after that, you could come and, you know, just flush everything, excavate them. But I think the issue is, you know, the long-term impact, because...
Why aren't we talking about this? Why is this not a big issue in the state legislature? Why is it not a big public policy issue?
I'm not sure, because we pointed that out. We said that, you know, you could have, there is the acute impact, but there's also the long-term impact. You know, there are some chemical reactions that will take place. You could have some eventual air episode quality. So we are not sure at this moment. I think some of it also is related to funding. Well,
how much funding can you put into infrastructure?
Correct. I mean, how much funding? I mean, especially let's say the HUD funding or others. To my understanding,
yeah.
I mean, people's lost their homes, so you want to rebuild their homes, rather than say put some money to do science.
Michel, in the time we have left, the Trump administration, their policies as it relates to climate change, your impression is?
Well, I'm not, usually when people think of scientists or an environmental engineer, they think that we are environmentalists. I mean, to me, I have maybe the most boring job, Whatever the community decide, we can make the best of it. So on this issue of climate change, to me, because we don't know if, there are people who say we don't know much about it.
What do we know? That's all I care about, the science. I don't care about the politics.
Exactly.
I care about the science of climate control.
My point was to say, well, look, why don't we investigate it? Why don't we put more resources to investigate it? I mean, I don't see any other way. I mean, the approach to say, well, this is not important or we don't think it's happening, it doesn't make sense to me.
And if people say, Michel, listen, there are different scientists who say different things, so it's a big controversy, you say?
Well, the only way to solve such a controversy is by investigating it. Just turning away, closing our eyes is not going to go away. So if we invest in this, I mean, as you can tell, I'm an immigrant, and what the U.S. has led the world with science. And so to me, as now a citizen and a father, I think that's what I want for my children. I want them to be in the best country in the world, that has the best science.
Well said. Michel Boufadel is director of the Center for Natural Resources Development and Protection at the New Jersey Institute of Technology, NJIT. Thank you so much, Michel. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
State of Affairs, right after this. Be back.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We are pleased once again to welcome back our good friend, Cecilia Zalkind, who is Executive Director, Advocates for Children of New Jersey. Cecile, good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Every year, when my great friend and colleague, the terrific broadcaster Rafael P. Roman, would bring you on Capitol Report, we'd always hope you'd come back with this report on the children of New Jersey and say, things are great. They're doing great. They've improved. And this year on our new series, State of Affairs, I want to ask you, with this report, by the way, put it into context, every year there's a report that is done that looks at what?
Well, this year we released 2 weeks ago our report that looks at Newark.
Right.
So it's a whole range of indicators of child well-being, health, economic well-being, education, childcare, preschool. Later in the spring, we'll put out a state report. But actually, things are looking better in Newark.
Give us the indicators and give us the improvements.
I think there have been improvements across the board. Health is probably the biggest area. There are very few children, the lowest percentage without health insurance, which is very positive. Other health indicators are positive. Higher graduation rates. Child poverty has dropped a bit. It's still an issue in Newark. More families accessing the Earned Income Tax Credit. It's positive news across the board.
So more children having access to health care directly related to Medicaid expansion?
Yes, absolutely.
Explain that to people, because it's jargon, Medicaid expansion. What exactly does it mean?
Well, New Jersey actually has always had a very strong child health insurance program. It's dependent on federal money. It has a state match. We've had a program that's been provided pretty good coverage. There's certainly a family copay at higher incomes. But 3 years ago, states had the opportunity to bring down more federal money and expand it to more low-income families. What happened is it brought a lot of parents who did not have health coverage into the healthcare system. And we know from history that when parents are covered, kids are covered too. So we have greatly expanded access to health insurance for kids.
What is the Donald Trump presidential administration saying on this subject?
Well, the jury's still out, but it's a little scary. We're watching very closely to see what's going to happen. The early indications, I think, to be honest, were frightening. The thought that we could simply repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Excuse me, you're making reference because we are taping in mid-April of 2017. The first effort to repeal and replace did not pass. Were you pleased with that?
Yes, but really it was just the first volley. Now we're waiting to see what else happens.
Well, here's my question. If, in fact, more children in the Newarks, in the Camdens, in the Trentons, in the Long Branches, Asbury Park, East Orange, Elizabeth, they go down the line. If, in fact, in those communities that, in fact, President Trump has said he's extremely concerned about the urban centers in this country, Chicago, New York City, et cetera, Los Angeles. If, in fact, more of these children are being covered than ever before, then why would his administration, through the Department of Health, want to change any aspect of that?
Well, I think we have that same question. This is a program that has succeeded. Yes, it probably has some things that need to be fixed. There are probably
some things... You're talking about the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
Clearly, there needs improvements.
Yes,
but in this area?
Not in this area. In this area, the support for low-income children and their parents, I think, has made a huge difference. And it's not just about health care. Health impacts on everything. We've been looking, for example, on chronic absenteeism across the state, and specifically in Newark. Big link to health because linking to absenteeism. It's fundamental for families.
Families in Newark, what percentage of those families are living below the poverty line? It's
now 39%. So almost half, almost 1 in 2 children. That is actually an improvement. Last year it was a lot closer to half. But I think the more telling data is that almost 3/4, 70%, are considered low income. So this is 200% of poverty, about $47,000 a year for a family of 4.
Describe what they're facing. And beyond the statistics, beyond the dollar figures, one of the things you've always been able to do with Raf and I, when you've been on with us in the past, is to break this down in human terms, which matters most, not just to me, but more importantly, to our audience on public television, FiOS, and other places. Break it down on a human level.
Well, it impacts on everything, right? It impacts on a family being able to provide housing, stable housing, affordable housing for their kids. We see a lot of families in Newark, particularly in some of the wards where the incomes have not increased, move around a lot because they can't afford rent. It impacts on what we would consider the basics, having enough food to put on the table. And all of that impacts on how well a child does in school. It is an immediate and a long-term consequence. Immediate in that well-being and health of the child, and long-term on that child's ability to grow up into a healthy, productive adult.
I don't want to make this a referendum on the Trump administration and their policies regarding children, particularly in urban and poor areas. But the Meals on Wheels and the after-school programs for children who would often have a hard time getting access to food?
Yes.
I believe it was, and help me on this team, who was it who said in his administration that these programs are simply not working? Well, a top member of his administration. I believe it was that, in fact, the budget director who said these programs are not working. What do you think he meant by that, A, and B, how would we define working? And what would it mean, ultimately, a loaded question, I know, if, in fact, Meals on Wheels / after-school programs having to do with food for these children was taken away?
Well, I don't understand how it cannot be successful. Meals on Wheels is primarily a program for the elderly.
Yes.
I look at someone like my father, who lived to 96. Meals on Wheels enabled him to stay independent in his house that he built with his own hands, that he wanted to stay in. If he didn't have that meal coming every day, he couldn't have lived there. For children, after-school programs are critical. When we talk to parents, often the #1 issue is having a place for my child to go after school so that I can work. It doesn't make sense to me that these fundamental programs are on the chopping block.
And the federal government's involved in those. They
Yes.
fund them.
Yes.
And if they don't fund them?
If they don't fund them, I think New Jersey is in trouble. If you look at where policy and programs have improved for children, it's been federal.
Risky, and I don't want to be self-serving, but children in urban areas often dependent upon public broadcasting.
Yes, absolutely.
The Corporation for Public Broadcasting is in line for a major cut from this administration. Do you believe it has any implications, if in fact that cut were to stand and Congress were to approve it, in terms of the well-being of children?
Yes, I do. Personally, I believe that access to the arts, to positive programming, that's educational programming, and other arts opportunities are really important for children. Again, it impacts on their education, on their well-being. I think that would be tragic.
What message would you send to the president right now on behalf of the children of Newark and every urban community in the state and nation right now? I mean, these are the children you advocate for every day.
Well, I think first I'd say think about what you're doing. And then I'd say, come to New Jersey, come to Newark, come and meet some of these families and children. Come and understand what they face every day and how important some of these programs that you're talking about cutting are to them. Not, fancy frills, just to maintain their well-being every day.
You remain confident, though, in spite of everything you see.
I am confident because I think we have an outstanding congressional delegation. We and other groups did a lot of work to give them information about what the impact would be on families in their districts, and I think it made a difference.
Cecilia, thank you. We appreciate every time you're here.
Thank you very much.
Catch you next time again on State of Affairs. We appreciate it. Thank you, Cecilia.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the CAUCUS Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by Summit MD Anderson Cancer Center, Delta Dental of New Jersey, Valley National Bank, Johnson & Johnson, New Jersey Resources, New Jersey Sharing Network, and by the North Ward Center.
Hi, I'm Dennis Wilson, President and CEO of Delta Dental of New Jersey. You probably know that visiting your dentist and daily at-home care are necessary for maintaining good oral health. What you might not know is that your oral health is connected to your overall health. Oral health may impact conditions like diabetes, blood disorders, and heart disease. Regular cleanings and checkups allow your dentist to assess your risk and keep you and your smile healthy.